Good morning, Charles.
Good morning,
How are you
Dan.
today?
I'm doing well, thanks. It's nice to see you. Nice to see you still in your home office, and because originally the plan was for us to record yesterday and then to do some recordings with you on the road, but you're still home. I see. So that's good. That means your house is still there.
My good mic.
Your house didn't blow away
Right.
during the storm, so that's good.
No. Yeah. I guess the storm didn't have as much red and orange on the map as Ian did, because I got a lot less texts checking in on me.
Yeah.
But that's fine. It's fine. I mean, I still got a couple of them.
Did you lose power?
No, nothing.
Yeah, me
How about
neither.
you?
I had some pretty strong winds shaking things around. It made it pretty difficult to sleep overnight. I guess Wednesday night into Thursday, because the camper was jostling a bit in the wind. But no, never lost power. Didn't have any big problems. So I was happy about that. And yesterday I just pretty much chilled out all day and watched some movies and ate some junk food and kind of just sat around the house. Didn't have a lot to do work wise either. I think most people were still recovering from the trauma of storm prep, if not living through the actual storm, because sometimes getting ready for the storm is as stressful as dealing with the actual storm or the aftermath of the storm.
Yeah. I felt lucky because I went a little bit nuts for Ian in terms of the prep and everything. And I'll be honest with you, I haven't even moved the sandbags out from in front of my sliding glass door since Ian. So I was like, yeah, I'm good,
Absolutely.
So this was like, and it was like, all right, it's gonna be a category 1. It's nothing. So yeah, I didn't worry, and I had a whole bunch of water left over. I had a bunch of flashlights and batteries and everything. I was just like that. I was too lazy to even put away. I haven't found because my garage is so disorganized. Anyway, I don't want to get into this too much on on this podcast, but we can talk a little bit more about it on the Patreon episode for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I was glad to dodged a little bit of a bullet. It didn't look super scary. Now there's some stuff on the beach that's looking real rough. The 1-2 punch of the two storms and the beach erosion. I'm seeing some buildings and stuff that have been destroyed, but
wow,
nothing, not the level of inconvenience certainly that Ian brought to the whole Central Florida area. But anyway, okay, so again, because I continue to be a terrible student. I read chapter 1 of Tiny Habits this morning while I was eating my breakfast and sitting at my computer. And man, I'm liking this book a lot. It's doing a lot for me. And chapter 1 is a little bit on the technical side, and I was worried that it would be a little bit dry, but BJ Fogg definitely sprinkles in enough stories about people who have taken his class and enough personal anecdotes too to sort of keep it lively, keep it interesting, which I like, because when you initially page through chapter 1 in this book, there's a lot of graphs, and graphs can often sort of go hand in hand with boring material, right? But
especially when it's not a straight line, when it's a curved line, like, oh wait a minute, now I need to think a little bit, right?
Exactly.
Like what is the relationship going on here? And then all of a sudden, a little bit of a trigono, or what do you call it? Calculus panic starts setting back.
It's like, why am I looking at half of a parabola? This is, if you're going to make me look at half of a parabola, you better have a really good freaking reason.
It's better be worth it, damn it.
Exactly. But I don't understand exactly why he went with the curve, because the first one that I looked at, I was like, I feel like a diagonal line would still get this done. I think he just went with the curve to make it look more interesting.
Oh, could be. Yeah, I'll need to take a look at that in a little bit more detail as to why it is a curve. Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder if it's based on some data he's pulled, but what
maybe, or it might be based on some publisher that said this would look more interesting if it was a curved line instead of a diagonal line.
Yeah, it definitely does. It definitely does look more interesting with the curved line for sure. Well, maybe not, because if there's an inverse relationship between motivation and ability on that, I need to, again, my math escapes me. And so I never thought I'd be using it again. So I'm sorry.
Same.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hardy, my calculus teacher in high school. So as much as I liked your personality, I didn't see using calculus, but now, so maybe because of the inverse relationship, because as one goes up, the other goes down.
Yeah, even if
it's requiring the
even if that's not true, it sounds good. So yeah. Let's go with that. Okay, so the core sort of presupposition or the founding principle of this chapter is that a behavior happens when motivation and ability and prompt all converge at the same moment, right?
Right.
And he says that applies to quote unquote good habits, good behaviors, bad behaviors, any behavior that affects the human experience basically is an equation of motivation plus ability plus prompt equals behavior.
Right. Yeah. What was interesting is he talks about how it's really difficult for people to really believe that that's a kind of a universal model in terms of that your online shopping habit is just as is you can use the same principles to describe and understand why you're doing this online shopping versus your workout, trying to start a new workout or a new diet kind of thing. Right. Or even use that model to get rid of a bad habit. It's pretty great the way he breaks this down, and it makes it very logical. Yeah.
He makes a good argument for that being true. And I was thinking about it with, one of the examples he uses of a quote unquote bad habit, a habit that somebody's looking to break, is just sort of their endless scrolling on Instagram when they wake up in the morning. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking the good behavior that I sort of matched that up with was that guy, Cameron Haynes, who's often on Joe Rogan's podcast, who's an ultra marathoner. Mm-hmm. And he basically, as part of his training, he runs a marathon every day. He wakes up and runs a marathon every day before he goes to his 9-to-5 job. He wakes up and runs a marathon. I
barely make it to the mailbox in the morning.
I know this guy's doing 26 miles every morning, or maybe he does it every afternoon. I forget exactly, but he does it like every day when he's training for an ultra marathon race. He runs a 26-mile marathon daily, and it's crazy to think that the same processes in my brain and the same circumstances that lead me to say, okay, Charles, you want to wake up early tomorrow, so you better be in bed at 10. And then, at 11:30, I'm still scrolling on Instagram. Like the same thing that makes that happen is the same human thing that makes him run a marathon every day.
Right. Yeah. So can you break that down, or do you want to do that together?
Yeah, let's do it together.
To give people, the listeners kind of really understand, because it seems like, and what the analogy BJ used is really a bicycle. So a bicycle basically does the same thing, but it can have different parts. It can be different sizes. It can be, so it can look differently. And so that's why it's really kind of difficult. But in the end, it gets you from one place to the other, right? And
same.
His BM
you can label, your niece's little Tickle Me Elmo bicycle with the training wheels and the little, things that flow from the handlebars and the bell. That is a bicycle just as much as the thing that Lance Armstrong used to get hopped up on PEDs and win the Tour de France over and over again. Those are both bicycles, but they don't look or act quite the same in the context that they're being used, but they are still both bicycles.
Exactly.
And so scrolling on Facebook for an hour and a half before I go to sleep is a behavior, just like getting up every day and running a marathon, putting in my 26 miles. That would also be a behavior. And so they are going to be governed by the same components. The same components make them both up, but they appear in different ratios and to different degrees, right?
Right. And basically how that happens is, and as you said, is that behavior happens, right, when you either have enough motivation or the ability to do something, and then that exists, and then a prompt comes into the environment, into the picture in your world somehow, and all of those. So all of our actions, all those behaviors, are based on those three things happening at the same time.
Right. So I thought of it in terms of, okay, what is a behavior I can think of that has the highest motivation and the least amount of difficulty? And when I think about that, I pick something that I constantly am doing all the time. Now, it's not something that I'm not thinking about to the level of, your heart beating or breathing. That's involuntary. That just happens. You don't get a vote in that. Yeah. But the somewhat crude example I came up with, which I'll try to polish up as best I can, is shaking off after you use a urinal.
Okay. All right. Because let's go with that.
You do it every time. At least, everybody I know does. You do it every time, and it's super, super easy, and you're very motivated because you don't want to walk back to the dinner table at the restaurant with a big spot on your drawers. So it's super easy. You're super motivated. And so it happens damn near automatically. You don't even think about doing it.
Right. Yep. And what would you identify as the prompt to do that?
The environment. I mean, I'm standing in front of a porcelain urinal and liquid just came out of me. So that prompt is very clear to say, okay, in this setting with this thing that just happened, this is just what you do next.
Yep. Exactly. Right.
And so, I know a lot of people talk about tying their shoes, brushing their teeth, and how automatic those are. It's like, no, I got one that's even more automatic than those.
There you go. Right. Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, and the same thing with scrolling on social media in bed. The example they used was, a woman who basically she'd wake up, her alarm goes off, she picks up her phone, and, she automatically lies there and starts scrolling on Instagram. And the reason is because it's first of all, it's very easy to do, and it's also very enjoyable. So she's very motivated, and the ability is high. And the prompt is her phone alarm going off in the morning. Right.
She's using her cell phone, as most of us do, as her alarm clock. And so if you use your phone as your alarm clock, then it's very easy, because you're already going to have to pick up the phone. You're going to have to look at the phone, and you're going to have to either hit the snooze button or the stop button on an iPhone to do something with the alarm.
Yep.
It's like, oh, well, I've got the phone in my hand. I'm looking at the phone. Why don't I do some of the things with my phone that deliver some real quick dopamine? Oh, I'll go check, see how many people liked my last Instagram post. And then once you do that, then it's like, okay, and now I got to look at other people's posts too, because I've already got the Instagram app open.
There you go. And then before you know it, an
hour and a half's gone by.
Right. Yeah.
Yep.
And, the same thing with the guy doing the ultra marathon runner who's running a marathon every day is so for him also, remember that, like, the more times you repeat a behavior, the easier it gets.
Right.
So
exactly.
The ability can be tweaked. So, but it's the same breakdown, right? He's very motivated, first of all, because he's doing ultra marathon. So he's motivated to get out there and put 26 miles on the road. But the ability for him, is actually a lot less than it is, or it's a lot easier for him than it is for somebody who doesn't run ultra marathons.
For sure.
Something that he's been doing, repeating over and over again.
Right.
So, and the prompt could be, all right, after he's finished breakfast or after he's finished lunch, whatever that is.
Or when his alarm goes off, whatever that thing is.
Right, exactly. So,
yeah. And I'm sure that's the thing. People that are highly disciplined competitors, or highly disciplined whatevers, they're probably doing all this stuff sort of on their own without without reading the book. And now I'm not saying they're perfect in every aspect of their life, but there is a lot of stuff like this that when you have a very competitive job or a very competitive sport that you find fulfilling and you get a lot out of, you're going to be sort of tweaking those levers of prompt and motivation and difficulty. You're doing this automatically because your motivation is just so high. You get so much out of that activity that you'll adjust whatever you have to adjust to make it happen without necessarily having to read a book that tells you how to do it.
Right. But what's amazing is that the key here is the consistency and the of repeating the same thing over and over and over again. So these these professional athletes that have these routines, you have these behaviors, the motivation's super high. They've got a prompt, maybe they've got a trainer, maybe they have to be at a training camp or a certain time of day, whatever that might be, right? But then by repeating that, doing that over and over and over again, it's easier to get their butts out of bed. It's easier for them to get on their training equipment. It's easier for them to make the drive over to the training camp. It's easier for them to get in that. The more times you do it, the less you need to think about it. Your brain actually will, and there's studies that show that your brain will take will take these new behaviors and actions and move them from like the front part of your brain to the back part of your brain. And when it does that, that's kind of the area of the back part of your brain is where like the automatic, where the things that just happen without you having to really consciously think about them.
Right.
And it actually, they've actually shown that that the brain will move that stuff to make room for new stuff in the front part of your brain, which is freaking awesome to me. I love that idea.
Yeah.
Same thing with, with driving a car, right? You don't think about it anymore. You just get in, you go, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, it was.
He really breaks down the process in this way.
And we'll talk about this a little bit more in our other episode. The thing I was thinking about was, what it takes for, Joe Average to get in really good shape physically versus what it takes for Chris Hemsworth or Daniel Craig to get in shape, where, not only do they have the experience of, okay, it's time for another Bond movie, it's time for another Thor movie, so this is just what I do. My daily schedule, the things I eat, the way I work out, that's just going to change. But there's also the factor of, the studios are so invested in them getting in the shape that they want them to be in. The studio basically cranks the lever on the difficulty way down by providing, at 7:00 in the morning, that personal chef is just going to show up at your door and he's going to make you your breakfast. Or that personal trainer is going to just show up at 10:00 and say, okay, Chris or Dan, it's time for your workout now. And it's interesting how, yes, that obviously it does take discipline and they have to be motivated and all that, but they also are leveraging / exploiting this behavior model by having ways to make it easier for them, again, because the experience of doing it before, and also other people who are so invested in them succeeding that they're actually spending time and money and effort to make it work for them, where you and I are probably not going to have that same level of, ease of getting into the shape that we want to get into.
Right now,
but there are other things we can do, but not the same things that they have.
Right. And one of the other things that they have is the big M, the motivation in terms of money, right?
Exactly.
Money is a big one.
Money, fame, status, all that stuff. I mean,
all of those things, right? And also being on camera. Like you are going to be accountable. I mean, they talk about, basically accountability partners and going on social media and saying, hey, look, I'm doing this and making yourself accountable. These people are making themselves accountable to the world. Right. It is. Right. I mean, you've got a social media following, but you're not like in Hollywood.
Exactly.
Like, that's a different level. Right.
Yeah. 700 friends on Instagram is not the same as $700 million movies.
Right. Exactly. So, and that's why it's unfortunate to just kind of compare yourself to these people who are living in a completely different world, and they've got their equation to get this, to get this body or to get this behavior done is completely different than yours.
Right.
So,
and so that's why it's important for people to say, okay, based on my time, my money, my availability, I just want to be the best I can be. And I want to be better than I was yesterday. Not, I want to be in better shape than some multimillionaire movie star. Right. I mean, you may be able to get that way. You may not. It's really, it depends on, your genetics and your opportunity and your motivation and, how much you can adjust the levers of prompt and difficulty in your life. And we're going to talk about this in the next episode where we're doing the brainstorm. Here are all the things Charles could do to get in the kind of shape he wants to. And some of those will be, I could quit my job and just, work out 6 hours a day. I'm not going to do that because it would cost me too much in other areas, but that's one thing I could do.
Yep. Yeah. And from that's where we would then move on and go, okay, well, maybe you can't do 6 hours a day, but maybe that's an idea now. Maybe there are things that you could stop doing so you had more time to work out. Right.
Exactly.
So that's the idea of this total freeform brainstorming session that we're going to do. So one of the other pieces here that's really critical to realize as part of this is that creating new habits actually can disrupt bad habits you want to get rid of. Right. So for, basically what was happening with the example that BJ gave about the woman scrolling on Instagram, first thing in the morning, was that she'd scroll so long she'd miss her morning workout.
Right.
And so basically what she needed to do is she needed to redesign this the scrolling habit, or basically redesign her mornings so that the scrolling habit went away, so it didn't impact the habit she's trying to form, which is to, get to the gym every morning.
Yeah, I like how, it seemed like the initial approach was, okay, I'm going to try to work on this scrolling habit first, and then I'll take on the gym habit. And then she was pleasantly surprised to find out there was no work that really needed to be done on the gym habit. It was only her bad habit of waking up and scrolling for too long. That was the only thing that was getting in her way of going to the gym. And so once she got that bad habit out of her life, she was able to, just sort of naturally replace it with the gym time, which is what her desired outcome was in the first place.
Yeah. And I think you're going to compare, I think where it really something to think about is, look at the motivation and ability between those two habits, right? Who wins?
Right.
It's the scrolling, right? It's
yes,
versus going to the gym.
It's more fun and it's easier to do.
Right.
Exactly,
I mean, it's really tough to basically be able to just go, all right, I'm going to give up that one. So if the motivation and ability is really, really so much higher on the scrolling habit versus the gym, then it's kind of like, well, what are you left with then to tweak to be able to make one kind of go, make the gym habit go a little bit above and make it more, have the behavior happen more than the scrolling habit. So, and that's where he kind of says you should really kind of work backwards from the equation B equals MAP. You start with the prompt, right? And then you work. And then if you can't find a suitable prompt to troubleshoot, then you look at the ability. Can you make it harder or easier? And then if that doesn't work, then finally you look at the motivation and see if that can be tweaked. But, as we both know, motivation is a little fickle monster.
Exactly. And and he previews the I guess chapter 2 is when he covers the motivation monkey. And I'm looking forward to reading about that. I don't want to blow past other stuff I want to talk about, but let me give an example. So the first example he uses on the BMAP is when he was at the gym one day on the treadmill and he gets a text from the Red Cross about the earthquake in Haiti. And he had the motivation because the earthquake had already been in the news and he saw how rough things looked down there. The ability was super low because that was one of the first times, and Red Cross does this now with other disasters and other humanitarian crises, where they basically, if you're on their list, they just text you and all you have to do is respond to the text message and you'll send them a donation. So he had the ability because all he had to do was reply to a text, and the prompt was he spontaneously received a text message from Red Cross saying, hey, if you want to donate to this thing, just reply to this message and it'll give us $10. And yeah, that's a great example of all those things just coming together, because like he said, if he had to stop running on the treadmill or walking on the treadmill to go find his credit card and type in the number and all that kind of stuff, he probably never would have done it. Or he would have had the thought of, oh, that's a great idea, I should do that later, and then just kind of forget about it, right? But because they made it so they found a way to lower the difficulty so very low that they ended up making $21 million by the end of the first week of that campaign.
They also did other things right. So basically, they're the people who they're contacting, they're already motivated. If they agreed to allow Red Cross to send them that text, so they're already motivated. So they've checked that box. The ability, like you said, made it really easy by sending the text. So all they had to do is reply back, right? And the prompt was there. It was a text. It was a text message to say, hey, all you had to do was read the text message from them. So they got all three parts of that equation right. And so most likely, the behavior was going to happen in more people than not.
Yeah. I thought that was a great example. And then we get into the section with the different graphs where, and I love that he emphasizes the importance of being able to teach the system to somebody else, because that's really that's the way you know that you understand something, is if you can make it simple enough to explain to somebody else in just a couple of minutes, right?
Yeah, and go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that's the one of the things I saw somebody on Twitter recently complaining about was, whenever an elected official talks about regulating something, like back when net neutrality was a thing, or the crypto markets, and whenever an elected official says we really need to regulate this commentator on Twitter was like, before you propose a bill to regulate any new thing that the government's not currently regulating, you need to prove that you can explain it to me in simple terms in about 2 minutes, and then I'll believe that you have the credibility to regulate it. Yeah. And what a great standard that would be for our elected officials here in the U.S. If you want to introduce a bill to give the government control of something it doesn't currently have control of, prove to me that you can explain it to a 5-year-old in terms that they can understand, and then maybe I'll believe that you have a right to dip your toe into this pool.
Yeah, you know what I'd settle for, Charles, if there was a bill or a law that said that the government no one can actually vote on a bill until they've read the entire thing, right? And I don't remember who proposed that, but I mean, it makes sense to me. I mean, that was a kind of a rude awakening that they vote on bills based on lobbyists coming in and saying, oh, yeah, this is what it says, and this is why you should vote for it, and this is why you shouldn't vote for it. I mean, they don't read it themselves.
Lobbyists and interns are pretty much the ones that craft these bills. And I believe it was actually Marjorie Taylor Greene, which, I can count the number of things that I agree with her on one finger, and it happens to be the middle of my left hand. But that's the one thing that I do think don't be voting on stuff that you just heard secondhand what's in it. That seems like it should be a given, right?
Right. Yeah. And the other thing is we didn't elect the interns and the lobbyists that are making these decisions, influencing. We elected these people. So it's honestly, it's disgusting to me.
Right. And so, if the answer is, well, the laws are too long and there's too many of them for us to read every one of them. It's like, okay, then let's pass fewer laws.
Right,
if you don't have the bandwidth to read them all before you pass them, then we need to be passing fewer.
Let's B equals MAP this thing, right? Okay, so the ability is not there to read all of these things. How can we make it easier? Oh, well, let's have summaries or make them smaller, or right? Let's troubleshoot this, right? So, he gives some again, like you mentioned, I love the way he's approaches. He breaks down what seems like complicated things into relatively simple equations and acronyms, and then gives some really good stories and anecdotes to help us really kind of understand and take it home. But like you said, it's really important if you practice teaching it. When it comes time to troubleshoot your own habits, you'll already be in the mode and have the experience to be able to explain that to somebody else, so you can kind of explain it to yourself again.
Right.
And when you do that, it helps you realize that this is an experiment. This is a work in progress. All of these examples he gives, he says that, look, that, the person who eventually figured out what she needed to do. So for example, the scrolling in bed habit, she realized, well, she needs to make it a little bit more difficult to do that. So, maybe she put the phone across the room, maybe she puts in front of her daughter's room, whatever that is. Turns out like she needed to take the phone out of the room and get a regular alarm clock. So she didn't just she didn't just change the make it more difficult. She needed to change the prompt. The issue was you start troubleshooting with the prompt. The prompt was alarm clock, her phone going off, her using it as an alarm clock every morning. That was a very reliable prompt. The problem is now that because the prompt is right there, it made the ability actually even easier. So she got a regular alarm clock and then put the phone out of the room. And so that's something to really kind of think about. If you teach it to somebody else, it'll be very easy for you to remember that there are different components, and to not beat yourself up and not to go, there's something wrong with me because I didn't get this. I'm not doing this one habit the way I initially designed it. You're going to remember, hey, no, there's going to be a few revisions here. We'll figure this out. And it kind of keeps you moving forward till you get to the point where you've got that behavior down.
Yeah. Just personally thinking about taking the phone out of the immediate proximity of my bed. I can appreciate all the reasons that's a good idea, but man, that would be very, very hard on the ability to execute for me to do, because I use my phone. I mean, I have a TV, but for the most part, I use my phone for almost all of my entertainment, my watching Netflix and Disney Plus and YouTube videos and listening to music on it. And I have this little arm next to my bed that's just like a little, my phone goes into it and I can adjust it like a gooseneck thing and watch TV shows like right laying in my bed. And yeah, moving my phone out of my room would definitely be a big ask for me. But fortunately, I don't think I'm pursuing any new habits that require that at this point. But there's so many experts like Huberman and stuff who talk about how good that is to do, Yeah.
I mean, listen, there are, this could be an excuse to buy an iPad, and not put any type of social media apps on it, and you just use it for entertainment purposes.
That's true.
And now you've got even a bigger screen there, for your viewing pleasure. And then, you put the phone somewhere else,
That's true. Yeah. And I have made the switch to I use my Apple Watch now for my alarm. I don't really rely on the alarm going off on my phone as much as I do on the Apple Watch, and I find it to be Now I also bought that fancy alarm clock, the sunlight style one. But I've been having so much trouble with my Wi-Fi here at the camper. I haven't fixed it yet so that it works. But my plan will be to use one of those that alarm clock where it gets brighter and brighter, like the hour before you're supposed to wake up, and kind of wakes you up with the light as well as with the sound. And that in concert with my Apple Watch, I think I'll be able to eliminate the need for using my phone as an alarm at all. So that's one of the things I am working on.
Great.
Okay, so in the book, he goes through a few other exercises and sort of graphs them out. Tidying your desk at work before you leave for the day. It's something that's pretty easy to do, and the woman who did it was pretty motivated to do it because she realized the benefits of it very quickly, where she came into work in the morning to a clean desk, and she immediately saw the clean desk and felt energy to get her task accomplished that day, which I actually read that part and then cleaned off my desk here in the camper before I started the podcast with you this morning, because there is just something about sitting down to a clean desk that makes getting important stuff done so much easier. And it's not hard to do, and you recognize the benefits of it pretty quickly. Hopefully I can spread that out to my entire living space. And I do love the way it feels when it's completely clean, but spending that 10 minutes a night before bed to clean it up is difficult. So that's a habit that I may decide to tweak using this method. Scrolling in bed, we covered that. It's super fun. It's super easy. So people do it super frequently. The mother protecting the child by fighting off a bear or lifting a car. He talked about that one, where the motivation is skyrocket, but the difficulty is also extremely hard. But because the motivation outweighs the difficulty, that's when you hear about those stories of people's adrenaline kicking in and they're able to do superhuman things to protect people.
Yep.
I like the example he offered about if somebody asked you, hey, what are you reading? Can you show me the cover of the book? And how easy it is to do that versus if somebody's like, hey, what are you reading? Can you read the whole book to me out loud? And it's like, okay, one of these things is like, sure, here's what I'm reading. The other one is like, no way, I'm not going to do that. Unless that person was able to tweak the lever of, motivation by either offering you a bunch of money or it being somebody, who is sight impaired and and they were important enough to you that you wanted them to have the information, then, that changes things and reading aloud to them becomes a lot easier. I mean, I would never feel like reading Harry Potter to some stranger in the bus station just because he asked me to. But if I have a kid, I could see that as being a very enjoyable and fulfilling experience.
Right.
So the same thing can definitely go from, feeling worth it, getting on the right side of the curve versus the wrong side of the curve based on who it is and why you want to do it. Right.
Yep. Exactly.
And then the last picture he puts in there, or one of the last ones, is how a behavior usually becomes easier to do when repeated. The first time you do something new, it's difficult, but the difficulty will go down the more you do it over and over and over again, like running 26 miles every day.
Exactly. Yes.
So I'm pretty hyped about this book now. This first, the intro was good. The intro to the intro, the part where he recorded about his struggle with getting becoming a good enough speaker to record the audiobook as a narrator. That was good. The intro was good, but this first chapter really started to appeal to the engineering mind inside my head and say, okay, this is something where we can turn, what feels like the chaotic nature of human behavior into a system that can be quantified and manipulated in a good way.
Yeah. He does touch briefly on that the lever of motivation a little bit as well, as an example, when you're kind of breaking down, hey, how do I, get this behavior to happen? Right. He talks about when he was on a plane, a kid was kicking the back of his seat.
I love that story. Kid,
and he basically broke it down. He's like, okay, what's the prompt? Well, can we change the prompt? Well, not really. There's he has no idea what's prompting the kid to kick the seat, right? And then he goes, well, the ability, is there any way we can make it more difficult? Well, you can't move the kid. He can't move his seat. And there's no real way to, for him to adjust the ability. So the last thing he was left with was motivation. So, he basically looks in his bag and he finds a little smiley face button and turns over to the kid and says, "Hey, listen, if I give you this smiley face button, it'll help you remember to not kick my seat." And he goes, "Yes," and he's super excited, and basically he motivated him to change the behavior. And so he didn't start with the motivation, and that's where a lot of us make that mistake. Is we start with motivation, and we think, actually, believe it or not, most of the time, I don't think we once in a while we might go to ability. We might look to get something a little bit, find like a tool, for example, to make that behavior a little bit easier. Right. But a lot of times we don't, and we just try to make do, and we don't try to make it easier, and we don't look at the prompts either. So I think a lot of times we get stuck in that motivation, but that's really the last area to look at when we're trying to either change a behavior or get a behavior done.
Yeah, I do like that he does make clear that manipulating the lever of motivation, it's not impossible. It's definitely possible. You can do it, both for yourself and for others. It's just not usually the place to start. Yeah. But sometimes, like in the example of the kid, there really wasn't anything else he could do except try to move that lever a little bit. And so that's what he did. And it's definitely got me thinking, okay, from now on when I take flights, is it a good idea to just have some little less than $1 treat in my bag so that if I'm sitting in front of a kid that looks like he might be a kicker, turn around and say to the kid and the parents, "Hey, can I give this to you to help remind you not to kick my seat?" Yeah,
he's got some great ideas in the book too.
I think I could do better than a smiley face button. I think I could give him something a little bit more fun than that, but I'll have to think about it.
Yeah, maybe a little stuffed animal or something. Who knows? Yeah,
or a toy gun, and then the kid pulls that out, and then he gets pulled off the plane, and he's not my problem anymore.
There you go. He got rid of the prompt. Smart move, man. You should write a book.
give a kid a vape pen or something.
Knock him out. There you go. Ability gone. Ability gone.
Does this napkin smell like chloroform?
If I give you this napkin, can you remember not to kick my? So at the end of each chapter, he also goes through a couple of exercises that really help, solidify the points that he's making in the chapter. And he kind of goes through one of them. He has you kind of brainstorm 3 habits that you want to stop. And then basically you go through the process of looking at the prompt, then you look at the ability and seeing what those are as part of that, of those habits to really try to help you start to get unstuck. And then the other thing you do is he tells you, go ahead and teach the Fogg behavior model to somebody else. And at first I was like, wow, this guy is so full of himself. He just wants us to spread his universal model around, but that's not the case. It's going to help you by being able, like you said, to teach somebody else. So you're going to, and you will indirectly, you could help them too, as well. You might get them interested enough to go, oh, hey, wait a minute. How can I break down my habits a little bit, or how can I make these changes? And the nice thing is you're spending the time and energy on something that, allows you to kind of, I guess, take it easy on yourself and to, release responsibility for your motivation, which goes up and down, and you're not a bad person because of that. Everybody's motivation goes up and down. That's just the way we are as human beings. Right. Just as our energy levels go up and down. And to hold ourselves, to try to fight that and basically hold this higher standard for ourselves that we're just going to disappoint ourselves and beat ourselves up, time and time again.
Yeah, it's definitely, we would not, if we were truly scientists working on an experiment in a lab and we made a hypothesis and then we tested it and the hypothesis didn't come true, we very likely would not say, okay, the bacteria didn't grow the way we want it to in this petri dish because I'm a bad person.
Right.
It's just, Thomas Edison probably didn't have the problem, before he landed on tungsten. He wasn't like, oh, the reason that lead won't work in these light bulbs is because I'm a bad guy. It was just, no, I'm in the process of, trying things and eliminating things that don't work and finding things that do work. And the more you can sort of step back and look at it dispassionately, the the more you're primed for sticking with it and landing on success. And exercise number 1, where we explore ways to stop a habit. I realize now that's kind of what we did when we were talking a week or two ago about me trying to stop the frequent trips to the gas station to munch on sweets. Okay, how do I stop myself from popping into Wawa for cake donut or a breakfast sandwich or something like that? And the answer is fuel up my car the night before my road trip so that I don't even have to stop at a gas station, and then bring some K-Cups with me so that when I drive an hour and a half to my client in St. Petersburg, I use their Keurig machine to make myself a nice big cup of coffee before I drive home. And then I'll have no urgent need to stop at a gas station, because what usually the precursor to me getting a donut or a breakfast sandwich at a gas station is, well, I have to stop there because I need coffee or I need gas. And so if I eliminate the need coffee and the need gas from the equation, then it actually becomes a little bit more difficult, both on the ability side and the motivation side, to say, okay, I'm going to stop my drive home. I'm going to get home later. I'm going to deal with more traffic just because I want to pull off to get a snack.
Yeah, you got, and if you don't take a step back to think about all of the things, all the ripple effects of that behavior, sometimes it's difficult. And if you don't have that mindset that, hey, this is an equation that can be applied to it, you may not even get into that mindset to kind of try to break it down and even take that step back to look.
Right.
So if anything else, if nothing else, this builds awareness, this book. So I think there's a lot of good stuff we can get into, but I want to save that for our Patreon subscribers. So
absolutely. Yep. Let's go ahead and stop there for now with chapter 1. And we will, you and I will come back and record our second episode. And then we'll also be back next week with chapter 2, motivation, focus on matching. So that'll be the topic of next week's free episode. All right, cool. Thanks, Dan. I will talk to you again soon.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.